1.4, Part 3. We covered quite a bit about color, and analogous color is where we stopped on Part 2. So this is what we're going to get into, page 107, Subjective Perceptions of Color. So we talk a little bit about the scientific nature of color, but the way we experience colors can be very individualistic. Also can be cultural. So it's a unique experience for most people, and some of our color associations are psychological and social. So the book states on 107 that there are differences in the way brides would wear different colors. In Asian countries, they would wear red on their wedding day, and of course, we would wear in the Western culture white. Um, but white is what I remember this in a Chinese film, that white is what they wear at a funeral. So white is the color of death for them, not black as we associate it. So they would not choose to wear white at a funeral. So we're going to get into hue, value, chroma, and tone. Hue is what we associate with the straight color with no white or black added to it or other colors mixed in. So this gives us a list of hues here, but I would call it, a broader range. Pretty much any version, the ideal version of the color is what we call the hue. This is now called coffin orange, this color. And this evolved in a funny kind of way. This is a coffin, and in Ghana, you would have a coffin made that would relate to what your life work was. So perhaps in this case, which was kind of interesting, somebody asked for a half-ripened cocoa pod. That's what they want to be buried in. So this artist became quite famous, and it's so funny. I read about this as a kid, and I thought this was so bizarre. I remember this, but they have happy funerals in Ghana, and this gives solace to the family that they still have many friends. They want to keep it happy, and if you think about the New Orleans funerals where they have sort of happy music, they do a bit of sad music, and then they go segue into some happier music and a march. And there are a lot of influence in the South, especially in New Orleans, from Africa. So it's quite possible that is where the tradition came from there. But back to the color idea is that that this man asked him to make a boat-shaped coffin, a different man, and then this guy asked for this cocoa pod, and then more people kept asking for this. So it was that that person's passion was the cocoa pod, so that's how he's buried. You can kind of see the lines here a little bit of like how it would open up. Beautiful piece, and then a little tree representing exactly, a cocoa pod, how it would be hanging and ripening on a tree. So this is orange, and we think of this as now cocoa pod orange, but this is a pretty standard orange color that we would associate with that color. So that's hue. It's a straight color. It doesn't have any black or white entered into it. So when you get into value, that's the next place we're going to go into. So color itself has value, and the book makes some distinctions here which are a little bit hard to understand, perhaps, if you don't know anything about value and color. But if you think about yellow, you think about it as being brighter or lighter than blue. So the actual hue, the actual color, straight primary color, does have value before you get into adding white and black to it. When we do add white and black, that's called tint and tone, and this is our value scale, if that makes sense. So when you are adding black to different colors, I think the clearest one here that we can see is yellow. So yellow here is in its regular pure state, and then we get into adding white to it, and it, to the point where it's white. And then we add a little bit of black to it. When I teach this class live, I have students do this, not quite looking like this, looks a little different, the layout. I don't particularly like this layout. But it does explain to you how it goes all the way black, all the way white, and then as you mix standard black and white, that's how the grayscale works. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and then I think the extra one here, 11, would just be the pure white. But at any rate, the grayscale here operates through the color. So if we dropped this top line into the blue, that is what we would get from straight blue, right? Now if we dropped it into yellow, that's what we would get, and drop it into red. So when red or yellow or blue or any color, even purple, gets black or white added to it, it changes the value. This is a great example. I'm going to go with this one. I really like it. And it's funny too, but let's get into the color first. This is a monochromatic piece. So monochromatic, mono means one, chromatic means color, so it's one color. It's all blue, but we have grayscale to make some definition of some shapes and some areas that we want to distinguish. So this hill, for instance, has some darker tones, some almost whites down here. His pants are probably a true black, maybe a little bit of blue in there, white shirt, but all the other things that in this image have blue in them, if that makes sense. Then the funny thing about this, just if you know anything about the history during the time that Braque and Picasso, Braque is seen here running, Picasso's on the actual plane, when they were developing collage, which was newspaper pasted into painting, when they were developing this, they were buddies. They referred to themselves as Orville and Wilbur. And Orville and Wilbur were the Wright brothers, and they were contemporaries. Okay, they were contemporaneous, which means both groups, meaning Picasso and Braque, these guys were buddies. They were making developments in art at the time that Orville and Wilbur were making developments in flight. So this is the humor of the artist, going way into way too much detail. But it's a monochromatic piece, and you can see white, black, shades of dark blues within this piece. It's all shades of blue. Okay. Anything I missed? All right. Oh, early days of Cubism. But also collage, which is another big thing that the two of them invented. So two big inventions, collage and Cubism, both Braque and Picasso. Okay, chroma. Excuse me. So when you think of a color in its purest state, it's its highest level of chroma. So it's a saturated color. You're going to learn about saturation, chromaticness, or intensity. I don't know anybody who uses this term chromaticness, but they use saturation and intensity quite frequently. When we look at our Barnett Newman piece, Vero Heroicus Sublimis, or Sublimis, I'm not exactly sure on that. This is a really amazing piece. I never warmed up to his work, but the more I read about it, the more I'm very interested in it. These have zips. There's more... you can't really see them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 zips. Now the way we perceive the whiteness here and the darkness here is very different in this piece. And we're going to get into relative color in a moment. But this is a highly saturated, intense color. Okay? So it really depends on how much chroma is in the piece. You can kind of think about it in the quantity of pigment a little bit, which is a physical manifestation. It's the stuff that makes the color. You can think of it, there's a lot of pigment in there, a lot of chroma. So subtle variations in the strong red hues, narrow vertical lines called zips, they alternate in color. He wants the viewer to stand close to the canvas and be engulfed in color. And there's a really interesting video. I usually do this in the exams. I'm not going to talk about this too much, but you can look at that. All right, we're going to stop there.